Okay guys, this video is for all the operators out there who have purchased my wax slug tool and may need some operator tips on the operation and how to keep it operational. I recommend using a hand screwdriver. These are self-tapping screws that go into wood. If you honk down on them with an electric drill that doesn't have a light clutch setting, you'll strip them out. But you can fix that by putting some super glue in the screw hole, letting that dry, and then you'll have a nice thing to rebite your screw back into if you do strip it out. But don't strip it out. These are stainless steel screws and washers, shouldn't have any problem with them. Okay, this is the clamp that holds down the blade, and this is the part that I think is going to be the most interesting to you operators, is the geometry of the blade and how to adjust the geometry of the blade so that it's cutting the way you want for your shells. Okay, there's several things going on here. Okay, you've got a shell getting inserted here, so think about the center point of this circle. Think of it almost like a wheel, that crimp bead being the wheel on a bicycle, the rubber tire of a bicycle spinning around. Well, you want to cut the sidewall of that tire. You want to cut the center of that bead. That would be your most effective cut. That's the easiest, lowest effort cut, but you have to dial it in for your particular ammo, because the ammo does vary quite a bit in the type of plastic they use, the thickness of it, etc. The size of the crimp bead, the depth of the crimp bead, all these things are all slightly different from different brands to brands. The way to adjust it to get what you want, okay, is you cut a shell and you go, oh, it's really taking a lot of effort. So look here, okay, this blade ramp should intersect this notch right here. See that notch? This ramp and this notch have to be like that. They can't be too far back or it won't cut enough. If it's too far forward, you can imagine that crimp bead trying to roll past that. It's going to get formed by this into a V. It's going to burnish the wood up into a little curl, and you're going to get a kind of a bell-shaped or a bugle shape to your loads. It's not going to affect how they load in your shotgun or fire, but it does affect how they look. Okay, so you've got to go out, it's just about 3/16 is what I've found works nice. That's why I make these exactly the way I do, and I get it to like that. Okay, now if you want it to cut a little bit differently, think about this circle going around. If you introduced the blade higher, okay, you're going to miss everything. Obviously you're going to be outside your notch, you're not going to be doing it. But you could introduce the blade lower, and what that'll do is that's going to grab the edge of that crimp earlier than if it were here. If the blade is down like this, it's going to start wanting to cut that crimp on the outside edge. Too far down, you're going to actually slice the outside of your shell, scallop it. And too far up, it won't cut enough. So what I have found is that if you set the blade so that it intersects that top, you're about 3/16 out, just a little bit, and then I use a putty knife or anything flat. You could use a flat bladed screwdriver to push down when this is on a table. Okay, push down on this edge right here and push that blade down about 1/2 millimeter into the wood. Now it's actually in the wood. You're getting more clearance here. You're getting a slightly earlier cut there that's going to intersect that crimp bead a little earlier, and it's going to want to peel off more of your crimp bead. You can adjust this. This can be pushed down more, or you can pull it up a little bit. You can go in, you can go out just a little bit. Okay, not much, but you can go in or out, and you may find that if you push it down a fair amount, you'll only need a tiny bit of the blade coming out, and your blade will last a lot longer, and you'll have a lot less effort twisting. But these are things I can't set up for your ammo. That's why I want to make this video, to show you that it's not that the tool doesn't work, or that the tool, it just needs to be adjusted to your particular load. There's another thing you can do. If you want to, just every time you cut, take off the whole top of the shell, or almost the whole top of the shell, what you can do is you can space the blade out by putting something here. You can either layer masking tape on the back of your blade. I like to do that sometimes. I'll put 2-3 layers of blue masking tape, and it'll come out to little spaces until I finally get it to where it cuts just the way I want for the particular kind of ammo I've got. Federal, Winchester, whatever you're Remington, whatever you're shooting. And you can also sometimes, it depends on your ammo and everything, but you could almost put just a whole nother blade behind this and have that blade like this, right? See how I've got clearance for that? And then you could have another blade on top of that that's like this, and you'll be cutting on the very, very outside edge. Or you could use a piece of cardboard from like one of your Shotshell packages to space it out, masking tape, a lot of different options there. That's why I make it with that exact size gap. Hoping you can see that pretty clearly. There's just that exact gap. Imagine the Shotshell going in there. What that wants to do is that wants to feed the blade onto the inside edge of your crimp. And it'll cut through the convolutions, and it requires a lot of effort. It's a snort, 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 snort. And then if the blade isn't quite far enough out, it won't cut every single convolution. You may have one or two convolutions that do not cut, and then you'll have to peel that out of there. That's not ideal. That's not the way I want it to work. You can adjust where it's cutting those convolutions. See, if the blade is further in this way, it's going to cut the deepest. You're going to have to go through every fold. It's a lot of work. You're cutting a whole lot of more material. If your blade is out this way with a spacer, or if it enters the cut earlier by being pushed into the wood and tilted down a little bit, like that, it's going to cut completely differently. It'll cut with much less effort, and it'll peel that crimp right in the center. It'll leave almost no crimp, which is real handy maybe when you're loading leaf slugs, or if you're using your wax really, really hot and you're not worried about it slipping out, or if you have a special kind of wax that's tacky and it doesn't slip out. But if you're just using candle wax, the reason I set these up is to make it safe for guys that just like to use regular old candle wax. And what that does is it leaves a whole big fold of a crimp in there. It may distort it a little bit, it may mess it up a little bit, it may make it look jagged, but it won't affect how the load's shot. I've shot thousands of loads, all different kinds. Kinds where I cut the top right off, kinds where I've got a big fat crimp bead, kinds where I have almost no crimp bead, just little tabs hanging down. So what I'm trying to get you guys to say is if you're actually going to the whole effort of making your own ammo and purchasing a custom-made tool that was invented just to do that for you, go ahead and get familiar with the thing and try out different settings with it. Don't let it frustrate you. Don't let this tool outsmart you. Just think about the geometry of it. You're rotating something past a blade. You're trying to get it to hit something that's not even 1/8 of an inch wide. If you look, you could pick up a box of Winchester, dump them all out, and I can find a thin crimp bead on Winchester, and I can find a real fat crimp bead on Winchester. I can find what looks like a shallow crimp, and I can find what is a deep crimp. If I set one tool just to cut that box, so it cuts all of them, some of them are going to be a little harder to cut, some will be a little easier to cut, some will have a little more material left, some will have a little less material left. It's not going to be uniform because the shells aren't uniform. So what you do is you find a happy medium, something that cuts the way you like. For my preference, what I like is to have almost no crimp bead, and I like to have very low effort. But if I were to send out all the tools like that, some people are going to have it not cutting the right way, and it also leaves so little crimp bead that if they just make a cold, not too hot paraffin load, it might slide out. You have a loose load, and the whole purpose of this tool is to stop loose loads. So yes, initially I set it up for a relatively high amount of effort. I set it up for sort of universal use, should work for most shells, and I have the bad luck of every time somebody does a video review on one of my tools, it's one of the tools that doesn't seem to cut their particular brand of ammo exactly right. Right now I'm using Winchester, the cheap Winchester target loads, and that's what I test all my ammo because it's the only thing I can find. I cannot find any other kind of ammo. I used to always use Federal. I like Federal. I prefer Federal. Federal plastic hulls are tougher and harder and cut cleaner, and the Winchester shells are kind of soft and I don't know, it's just weird, it's just different, and they're fatter. The plastic's a little fatter and they cut different. And So I'm going to go on the hunt for some federal shells, because that's what my buddy Matty 2009 is using, and it figures he would make a video, and his aren't cutting the way I want it to. It just happens, man. It sucks. But you have to embrace the suck. That's why we're on Google+.